She said, "I do," in a cathedral of white roses and crystal chandeliers. 3 days later, she was found at the bottom of a cliff in paradise, her white honeymoon robe stained red against black volcanic rock. What looked like a tragic accident would unravel into a story of deception, rage, and a past that refused to stay buried. May 7, 2019. The sun hasn't fully risen yet, but the heat is already building on the small island that hosts the Crystal Azure Resort. The morning shift is just beginning when Malik Farouk, a maintenance worker who has been with the resort for 6 years, takes his usual route along the cliff path behind the private villas. He is thinking about his daughter's school fees, about the leak he needs to fix in Villa 9, about whether he remembered to turn off the stove at home. He is not thinking about death. That changes at exactly 6:47 a.m. when he rounds the corner near Villa 12 and sees something that doesn't belong in paradise. A body lies on the rocks 40 feet below, waves washing over it with each surge of the tide. The white fabric of a robe spreads around the figure like broken wings. One arm is bent at an angle that makes Farouk's stomach turn. Even from above, even in the uncertain light of dawn, he can see the dark pool spreading across the volcanic stone. For a moment he cannot move, cannot breathe, cannot do anything except stare at the scene that will replay in his nightmares for years to come. Then his hands are shaking as he pulls out his radio, and his voice cracks as he calls for help. The response is immediate and well-rehearsed. The Crystal Azure Resort is exclusive, expensive, and paranoid about reputation. Within minutes, the resort manager arrives with 2 security staff. Police are called. The path is cordoned off with whatever is available, deck chairs and caution tape creating a makeshift barrier. And then someone has to go to Villa 12 and knock on the door. The man who answers is Ryan Al-Mansuri, 38 years old, wearing expensive pajama pants and a white undershirt. His hair is disheveled, his eyes confused and still heavy with sleep. When the manager says there has been an incident, that they need him to come with them, that it concerns his wife, the confusion shifts to something else. Fear, maybe. Or the very good performance of fear. He grabs a shirt, doesn't bother with shoes, and follows them down the path. They don't let him get too close to the edge, but he doesn't need to get close. The white robe is visible from 20 feet away. The dark hair spread across the rocks. The unnatural stillness of the body being moved only by the water. He makes a sound that could be a word or could be something deeper than language. His knees buckle and security catches him before he falls. He is shaking his head, repeating "no, no, no," in a voice that sounds genuinely destroyed. But in the 17 years that Detective Inspector Rashid Khalil has worked homicide, he has learned that the human voice can lie even when it breaks. Ryan's statement to the first responding officers is simple and devastating. He woke up around 6 in the morning and realized his wife Soraya wasn't in bed. He assumed she had gone for a walk. She had mentioned wanting to watch the sunrise from the cliff path. They had seen it on the welcome tour, the viewing point with the perfect angle over the bay. When she didn't return after 20 minutes, he started to worry. He got dressed and went looking for her. He found her slippers near the cliff edge, one on the path and one caught in the rocks near the drop. He looked over and saw her below. That is when he started screaming. The story is plausible. The path is known to be dangerous, especially near the viewing point where the railing ends and only a single rope line marks the edge. The rocks are loose in places. The light at dawn is tricky, shadows and brightness creating false depth. People have slipped before, though never fatally. One slipper near the edge, one caught below, suggests a sudden loss of balance. Everything about the scene says accident, except for the way Ryan's hands shake when he tries to light a cigarette. Except for the way his eyes won't stay on his wife's body for more than a second before looking away. Except for the fact that when the medics finally arrive and pronounce her dead, he doesn't ask a single question about what happened or whether she suffered. He just sits on the path with his head in his hands, silent. But to understand what really happened on that cliff, to understand the rage and betrayal and lies that led 2 people to that fatal morning, we need to go back. Back before the honeymoon, before the wedding, before the carefully constructed identities and the secrets neither of them knew about the other. We need to go back to the beginning of 2 very different stories that were always destined to collide. 6 months earlier, November 2018. The ballroom glitters under chandeliers that cost more than most people's cars. 300 guests sit in chairs covered in ivory silk, watching as a bride walks down an aisle scattered with rose petals. Soraya Nazreen is 29 years old, and she is absolutely stunning. Her dress is custom-made, her makeup flawless, her smile the kind that makes photographers instinctively adjust their angles to capture it better. She walks with the grace of someone who has spent years understanding exactly how men look at her and exactly how to use it. At the altar, Ryan Al-Mansouri watches her approach and feels something close to triumph. She is everything he wanted. Beautiful, yes, but more than that. She carries herself with a quiet elegance that his previous girlfriend lacked. She defers to him in public, asks his opinion, makes him feel like the man his father always told him he should be. His friends envy him. His business partners congratulate him on landing such a prize. His mother cried when they met because Soraya said all the right things about family and tradition and wanting children. She is perfect. On this night, under these lights, with this music and these witnesses, she is absolutely perfect. What neither of them knows as they exchange rings and promise forever is that both of them are marrying a carefully constructed lie. She believes he is the strong, confident provider who will give her the stable life she has craved since childhood. He believes she is the modest, traditional woman with a simple past who will restore his reputation after his last engagement ended in humiliation. Both of them have built these beliefs on foundations of carefully selected truths and deliberately omitted details. Both of them are about to discover that the past doesn't disappear just because you stop talking about it. It waits, it watches, and on a honeymoon island 6 months later, it will step out of the shadows with evidence that will destroy everything. The reception lasts until 2 in the morning. There are speeches about love and destiny. There are toasts with champagne that costs more per bottle than Soraya's mother made in a week when Soraya was growing up. There are photographs that will appear in society pages and on social media feeds, images of a fairy tale that everyone wants to believe in. As the night ends and they leave in a car covered in flowers, neither the bride nor the groom is thinking about death. They are thinking about the future, about the life they will build together, about the happiness they have finally secured. They are both wrong. The happiness is temporary. The future is counted in days, not years. And the life they think they are building together is already cracked down to its foundation, waiting for the right pressure to shatter it completely. To understand who died on that cliff, you need to understand who Soraya Nazreen really was. Not the woman in the wedding photos, not the modest bride who charmed Ryan's family, but the girl who learned early that beauty was currency and survival meant knowing your exchange rate. March 15, 1990. Soraya comes into the world in a small hospital on the edge of a city that promises everything and delivers very little to people like her family. Her father, Kamal Nazreen, drives a taxi 14 hours a day and still comes home counting change to see if there is enough for rice and eggs. Her mother, Fatima, works as a seamstress in a shop where women bring in dresses worth more than a month of her salary to have a single seam adjusted. They live in a 2-bedroom apartment with walls so thin that Soraya grows up hearing her neighbors' arguments, their televisions, their lives bleeding through the plaster. There are 2 younger brothers who arrive in the years after she is born, 2 more mouths to feed in a home where food is mathematics, not abundance. Soraya is 8 years old, the first time she truly understands the difference between her world and the other world. It is a birthday party for a girl from school, held at a house with a garden and a pool. Soraya isn't invited. She finds out about it on Monday when the other girls talk about the cake and the presents and the magician who made doves appear from his sleeves. At lunch, she sits alone with her sandwich wrapped in yesterday's newspaper while 3 tables over. Those same girls laugh and trade snacks from packages with bright colors and English words. She is close enough to see them, far enough that they never look in her direction. That distance, physical and social, begins to calcinate something inside her. A quiet fury that will shape every decision she makes for the next 2 decades. By the time she is 13, her father's taxi is involved in an accident that isn't his fault but destroys his back anyway. The other driver's insurance doesn't cover enough. Workers' compensation is a phrase that means nothing in their neighborhood. Kamal spends 3 months unable to work, lying on a mattress on the floor, popping pills that barely touch the pain. Fatima takes extra shifts at the seamstress shop and starts bringing work home, sewing until 2 in the morning by the light of a lamp that makes her eyes water. Soraya watches her mother's hands bleed from needle pricks, watches her father's pride crumble as he realizes he might never drive again, watches her brothers go to school in shoes with holes worn through the soles. She is old enough now to understand that money isn't just about having nice things. It is about not being crushed by the world's indifference. She is also old enough to understand that she has something most people in her neighborhood don't have. She sees it in the way shop owners smile at her when she buys bread. The way taxi drivers refuse payment when her father isn't there to see. The way men of all ages let their eyes linger a second too long before looking away with something like guilt. At 13, she doesn't have a name for what this power is or how to use it. She only knows it exists, this invisible currency that makes people act differently around her. By 16, she will have learned exactly what it is worth. The transformation happens during her teenage years, that narrow window when childhood softness hardens into adult angles. Soraya at 14 is pretty in a way that makes older women purse their lips. By 16, she is beautiful in a way that makes men forget they are supposed to be honorable. She doesn't try for this. She doesn't need to. The attention comes whether she wants it or not, follows her down streets, sits across from her on buses, appears in the social media messages that fill her phone. Some of it is grotesque, the kind that makes her delete her profiles and start new ones under fake names. Some of it is persistent but polite, older men who offer to help with school supplies or slip money to her mother with stories about charitable donations. She learns quickly that there are rules to this game. Act modest and the gifts come with fewer expectations. Act interested and the gifts get bigger, but so do the demands. Find the balance between the two and you can survive. Her first real relationship, if you can call it that, begins when she is 16. He is 34, owns a small electronics store, and approaches her after she comes in to buy a phone charger. He asks if she needs anything else, offers a discount, suggests coffee sometime to discuss a part-time job at his store. The job never materializes, but the coffee does, and then dinners, and then a new phone that her mother doesn't question too closely when Soraya says it was a bonus from her non-existent job. He never says what he wants in exchange, and she never asks. The arrangement is understood in silence. He pays for things. She smiles and pretends his jokes are funny and lets him believe he is special. When she turns 17 and he starts talking about wanting something more serious, something exclusive, she ends it gently and moves on. She has learned the first critical lesson of the life she is stumbling into. Never let them think they own you. By the time she is 18, the pattern is established. There are always 2 or 3 men in rotation, none of whom know about the others. One pays for her clothes. Another helps with family bills when her mother mentions the electricity is about to be shut off. A third takes her to restaurants where she photographs the food and posts it online, building an image of a life she doesn't quite live yet. To her family, she has a job doing marketing for various small businesses. To her friends, she is lucky, connected, good at networking. To herself, in the quiet hours before sleep, she is doing what she has to do to survive. The guilt, when it comes, is manageable. More manageable than poverty. More manageable than watching her brothers drop out of school because the fees are too high. More manageable than the look on her mother's face when the rent is late. In 2009, when Soraya is 19, she meets a woman named Selena at a networking event for young entrepreneurs. Selena is 40, elegant, running what she calls an entertainment consulting business. Over coffee, Selena asks Soraya direct questions about her current arrangements. How much are you making? How are you finding clients? What happens when they want too much? Soraya is defensive at first, but Selena isn't judging. She is assessing. And then she makes an offer that will change everything. You're already doing this work, Selena says, stirring sugar into espresso. You're just doing it inefficiently. Why accept a phone when you could negotiate a car payment? Why deal with men who think dinner means ownership? I work with professional women who provide companionship to high-end clients. Businessmen, tourists, people who understand this is a transaction. No drama, no danger, no settling for whatever scraps they feel like giving you. The first official arrangement happens 3 weeks later. A businessman from Europe, in the city for a conference, wants dinner companionship and conversation. The payment is $2,000 for 4 hours. Soraya wears a dress Selena lends her, meets him in the lobby of a 5-star hotel, and plays the role of sophisticated young professional interested in his stories about finance and travel. At the end of the evening, he kisses her hand, thanks her for her time, and the money appears in an account Selena set up. It is more than Soraya's mother makes in 2 months of sewing. It is more than her father made in a good week of driving. It is enough to make the guilt seem like a luxury she can't afford. For the next 8 years, from 2009 to 2017, Soraya builds a reputation in Selena's network. She is professional. She is discreet. She screens carefully, never meets anyone without verification, works only through the agency, maintains strict boundaries. Some clients want only conversation over dinner. Some want the fantasy of a girlfriend without the complications of an actual relationship. Some want more, and for those arrangements, the price goes up and Soraya makes her own calculations about what she is willing to accept. She tells herself this is temporary. Tells herself she is building savings for a real business. Tells herself that one day she will walk away clean, start over, become the person she was supposed to be before poverty made her desperate. The money piles up in accounts her family knows nothing about. The lies pile up just as fast. And somewhere in the accumulation of both, Soraya loses track of where the performance ends and where she begins. By 2017, she is 27 years old and starting to feel the industry aging her out. The clients want younger faces. The competition is increasing, and she is tired. Tired of the double life, the constant performance, the way she has to compartmentalize everything until she sometimes forgets which version of herself is real. She starts thinking seriously about an exit strategy. She takes actual event planning courses, builds a legitimate business as cover, starts networking in straight professional circles. And she begins looking for something she hasn't allowed herself to want before. A real relationship. Not with a client. Not with someone who knows what she does. But with someone who could give her the life she has been pretending to have. Someone wealthy enough that she would never have to go back to survival mode. Someone respectable enough that marriage to him would rewrite her entire story. She is looking, though she doesn't quite admit it to herself yet, for a man she can use one final time. Not for a night or a month, but for a lifetime. When she meets Ryan Al-Mansouri in February of 2018, she thinks she might have finally found him. April 22, 1981. Ryan Al-Mansouri enters the world in a private hospital room paid for by his father's expanding import-export business. There is no struggle here, no calculation of hospital bills against monthly rent. His mother, Amira, holds him in arms adorned with gold bracelets that catch the afternoon light. His father, Rashid, makes phone calls from the hallway, already planning the son's future in between negotiations about shipping containers and customs delays. The room smells like flowers from arrangements sent by business partners. This is Ryan's first lesson, though he is too young to understand it. In his world, arrival comes with congratulations from people who matter. He grows up in a house with marble floors and a garden where jasmine blooms in careful rows. His childhood is not extravagant by the standards of the truly wealthy, but it is comfortable in ways that most people never experience. There are private tutors when his grades slip. There are family vacations to European cities where his father conducts business while his mother takes him to museums. There is always enough, and the concept of not enough is something he encounters only in abstract ways, in news reports about other neighborhoods, other countries, other lives that exist in a different dimension from his own. His father's lessons are clear and consistent. Reputation is everything. The family name opens doors, but it can also close them permanently if disgraced. A man is measured by the company he keeps, the wife he chooses, the way he conducts himself in public. Rashid Al-Mansouri has built an empire on trust and respectability, and he expects his son to protect it. Your wife, he tells Ryan when the boy is barely 16, will reflect who you are to the world. Choose poorly and people will question everything about you. Choose well and doors open before you even knock. Ryan absorbs this lesson completely. When he goes to university, studies business administration, and joins his father's company at 23, he does so with the understanding that his personal life is not entirely personal. It is performance, presentation, proof of his reliability. At 29, he becomes engaged to Samira, a woman from a family his parents have known for decades. She is educated, poised, exactly the kind of wife his father described. The engagement announcement appears in society pages. Both families begin planning a wedding that will merge not just two people but two networks of business relationships and social capital. Then Samira falls in love with someone else. A doctor she meets at a charity function, someone with less money but more passion, someone who makes her laugh in ways Ryan never quite managed. She breaks the engagement gently, apologizes to both families, and marries the doctor within a year. Ryan handles it publicly with grace. He tells people he wants her to be happy, that these things happen, that he holds no grudge. Privately, the humiliation burns like acid. Not because he loved her desperately, though he cared for her in his careful way, but because she chose someone else, because people whispered about it at business dinners, because for months afterward, he saw pity in the eyes of associates who asked if he was seeing anyone new. The rejection marked him in ways he doesn't fully acknowledge, creating a wound that never quite heals. For the next 4 years, he throws himself into work. He expands the business into new markets, proves himself beyond his father's shadow, builds a reputation as shrewd and reliable. By his mid-30s, he is financially successful and socially respected. He sits on charity boards. He is invited to speak at business conferences. People seek his advice and partnership. But his apartment, large and expensively furnished, echoes with emptiness. His parents ask about grandchildren with increasing frequency. His married friends include him in dinners where he is always the odd number at the table. And sometimes, late at night after another successful deal, he looks at his reflection in the glass of his office window and wonders if this is all there is. What he wants, though he would struggle to articulate it, is someone who makes him feel like the man he presents to the world. Someone beautiful enough that other men notice and envy. Someone graceful enough to navigate his social circles without embarrassing him. Someone who defers to his judgment and makes him feel competent, in control, needed. He wants a woman who will restore the image that Samira's rejection damaged, who will prove to everyone watching that he is desirable, that he can secure the prize that matters. He does not want complicated. He does not want a woman with ambitions that compete with his own. He wants, though he frames it as wanting a partner, someone who will complete the picture of success he has been building his entire life. In February 2018, he attends a networking event at a luxury hotel. These events blur together for him now, the same conversations about market opportunities and regulatory challenges, the same business cards exchanged with people he will never call. He is preparing to leave early when a woman near the refreshment table spills water, and in the small commotion of napkins and apologies, their eyes meet. She is beautiful in a way that stops his automatic movement toward the exit. But more than beautiful, she carries herself with a particular quality he cannot quite name. Not desperate for attention despite clearly receiving it. Not pushing herself forward despite obviously belonging in these spaces. She apologizes to the server she splashed, tips generously from her own pocket, and turns to leave. He moves before he plans to, intercepting her path with a question about whether she is enjoying the conference. Her name is Soraya, she does event consulting, and unlike the many women who have approached him at these gatherings with transparent interest in his wealth, she seems genuinely focused on the conversation itself. She asks intelligent questions about import regulations that affect event planning. She listens when he answers instead of just waiting to speak. She touches his arm lightly when she laughs at something he says, then steps back before the touch becomes presumptuous. When she gives him her business card and excuses herself because of an early morning meeting, he watches her leave and realizes he didn't want the conversation to end. Their first date happens a week later. Lunch, not dinner, at her suggestion. She arrives exactly on time, dressed in a way that is elegant without being flashy. Over salads and sparkling water, she tells him an edited version of her life. She grew up in a modest family. Her father worked hard but opportunities were limited. She moved to the city to build something better. She talks about the struggle of starting a business, the clients who don't pay, the constant hustle to stay afloat. She mentions an older aunt who helped raise her but is sick now, medical bills piling up. She presents herself as someone climbing toward stability, not quite there yet, working hard and hoping it pays off. Everything she says is technically true. The lies are in what she doesn't say. Ryan, listening to her story, feels something shift in his chest. Here is a woman who has faced real struggle, who hasn't had everything handed to her, who will appreciate what he can provide. She is beautiful, yes, but more importantly, she needs him in a way that Samira never did. She looks at him with admiration when he talks about expanding into new markets. She asks his advice about business decisions. She seems impressed by his success without being grasping about his money. When he offers to help her think through a difficult client situation, she thanks him with genuine warmth and says no one has ever taken her work so seriously before. He leaves that lunch feeling more substantial, more needed, more like the man he wants to be than he has felt in years. Over the next 6 months, Soraya manages the relationship with the skill of someone who has studied men like Ryan her entire adult life. She is never too available, maintaining the impression that she is busy with her own work and life. She cancels dates occasionally, apologizing but firm, suggesting that she values her independence. She refuses expensive gifts at first, saying it doesn't feel right, creating the impression that she is not with him for his money. She talks about her faith, her family values, her desire for children someday. She mirrors everything his mother wants in a daughter-in-law. She is performing the role of a lifetime, and Ryan, wanting so desperately to believe that he has found something real, never thinks to question whether the woman he is falling for actually exists. In August 2018, on a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city where they met, Ryan proposes. The ring is expensive, traditional, chosen with his mother's approval. Soraya's tears are partially genuine because she does feel relief, triumph, and the intoxicating possibility that she might actually pull this off. She can leave the past behind, become the wife of a successful man, live the life she has been pretending to have. All she has to do is maintain the performance forever. Never let him discover who she really was. Never let the past intrude on the future she is building. It seems possible in that moment, with the ring on her finger and his arms around her and the city lights spread below them like promise. She tells herself that once they are married, once time passes, the lie will become truth. She will be the modest, traditional woman he thinks he married. The other Soraya, the one who spent 8 years learning exactly how much her company was worth per hour, will simply cease to exist. She is wrong. The past is patient, and it is already preparing to introduce itself. May 3, 2019. The boat cuts through turquoise water, carrying them from the mainland to the private island that houses Crystal Azure Resort. Soraya sits at the front, letting wind tangle her hair, laughing as spray hits her face. Ryan watches her from behind his sunglasses, feeling the satisfaction of having finally secured something precious. The resort appears ahead, white buildings against green palms, the kind of place that appears in advertisements for lives most people only dream about. Their villa is number 12, set apart from the others, with an infinity pool that seems to pour directly into the ocean and a terrace where breakfast will be served by staff trained to be invisible. Everything about it screams perfection. Neither of them knows yet that perfection is about to shatter. The first day passes like something from a romance film. They swim in water so clear they can see fish darting around their legs. They eat lunch on the beach under an umbrella, feeding each other bites of grilled seafood and tropical fruit. They take a sunset walk along the shore where Ryan holds her hand and talks about their future, about the children they will have, the life they will build. Soraya plays her part flawlessly, leaning into him, laughing at his jokes, suggesting names for sons they haven't conceived yet. As the sun sinks into the ocean and paints the sky in shades of orange and pink, she thinks maybe this is real now. Maybe she has successfully become the woman he believes she is. That night, in their villa with the sound of waves through open windows, everything seems possible. May 4th continues the illusion. They spend the morning at the pool, afternoon at the spa where they get couples massages and drink champagne in fluffy robes. Dinner is an elaborate affair on their private terrace, courses arriving silently and disappearing just as quietly, each plate a small work of art. Ryan, unusually relaxed with alcohol and vacation loosening his normal control, takes out his phone and does something he rarely does. He posts a photo of them, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, the ocean sunset behind them. The caption reads, "Paradise with my paradise." Soraya sees the post and feels a tiny spike of anxiety. She has carefully managed her social media, keeping her wedding photos limited to certain audiences, avoiding the kind of exposure that might trigger recognition from her old life. But she tells herself it's fine. That life is 2 years dead. Everyone from that world has moved on. She smiles and suggests they dance on the terrace to music from his phone, and they sway together under stars that know nothing about lies or pasts or the violence brewing in the days ahead. May 5th begins like the previous mornings. Breakfast on the terrace, coffee and pastries and fresh fruit. Soraya is reading a book, something light and romantic. Ryan checks his phone, something he has been trying not to do, but business doesn't stop for honeymoons. He scrolls through emails, deleting spam, responding to urgent messages with brief replies. Then his thumb hovers over a message from an address he doesn't recognize. The subject line reads, "Regarding your wife, information you need." His first instinct is to delete it. Spam, obviously. Some scam trying to create paranoia. But something makes him tap it open. The email is short. The sender claims to be someone who knew Soraya before, who thought Ryan should know who he really married. There are no dramatic accusations in the text, just a simple statement. Your wife worked as an escort through Selena's elite companions from 2009 to 2017. I was a client. Thought you should know before you waste more of your life. Attached to the email is a photograph. A woman who is unmistakably Soraya, though her hair is different, her makeup heavier, her expression calculated in a way he has never seen on her face. She is wearing a tight dress, posing in what is clearly a professional photograph designed to advertise her availability. Below the photo is a screenshot of a profile from an escort website, archived but accessible. The name listed is Yasmin. The description talks about sophistication, discretion, companionship for discerning gentlemen. The dates of availability match exactly with the years before he met her. Ryan stares at his phone screen. His coffee goes cold in his hand. His heart pounds so hard he can hear it in his ears. He looks up at Soraya, still reading her book, completely unaware that their entire marriage just detonated. She looks peaceful, content, exactly like the modest woman he thought he married. But now when he looks at her, all he can see is the other photograph, the escort photo, the professional smile that is all calculation and no warmth. He stands up abruptly, mumbles something about needing to make a business call, and walks into the villa before she can see his face. In the bedroom with the door closed, he begins to search. He reverse searches the image and finds cached pages from escort websites that have since been taken down. More photos of her, same woman, no doubt. He finds escort review forums, the kind of places he has never visited before, and types in Yasmin with shaking hands. The results make him physically sick. Reviews from clients rating her appearance, her conversation skills, her performance. Specific details about encounters that are too accurate to be fantasy. Dates that span nearly a decade. Prices that start in the hundreds and climb into the thousands depending on what was being negotiated. He reads testimonials from men who describe her laugh, her way of making them feel special, the girlfriend experience she provided. Some reviews are crude, graphic, detailing exactly what she was willing to do and for how much. Others are almost romantic, men who clearly believed they had a genuine connection with her, who write about how she made them feel desired and understood. All of them are talking about his wife, the woman he married, the woman he introduced to his mother, the woman who shed tears when he proposed and promised to give him children who would carry his family name. The afternoon passes in a blur of horror and searching. Every new piece of evidence he finds confirms what he desperately wants to deny. He finds the agency website, archived versions that list her under a different name. He finds date ranges that extend right up to January 2018, just 1 month before they met. The timing is too perfect to be coincidence. She didn't quit sex work and then happen to meet him. She quit because she met him, because she found someone who could give her the life she wanted, because he was the final client, the one she could marry instead of just billing by the hour. By the time the sun starts to set on May 5th, Ryan has moved through disbelief into something darker. Rage. Humiliation. The feeling of having been played so completely that his entire sense of reality has collapsed. Every memory of their courtship reframes itself. Her modesty wasn't real, it was professional distance. Her gratitude for his advice wasn't genuine admiration, it was manipulating his ego. Her reluctance to accept expensive gifts wasn't principle, it was strategy to make him feel like she wasn't after his money. Every word she said, every touch, every moment he thought was real now looks like performance. And he, who prided himself on being shrewd in business, who built his reputation on reading people and situations accurately, has been completely fooled by a professional liar. That evening when she calls him to dinner, his voice is cold in a way she has never heard before. They eat in near silence, her attempts at conversation dying against his one-word responses. She knows something is wrong but can't identify what. After dinner, back in the villa, he finally speaks the words that will start the cascade toward the cliff. "We need to talk." His tone makes her blood run cold. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out printed copies he had the resort business center make. Photos of her in escort advertising, screenshots of reviews, website archives. He lays them on the table between them one by one, each one landing like a physical blow. "Who is Yasmin?" The color drains from Soraya's face. Her mouth opens but no sound comes out. She tries to form words, tries to find an explanation, but there is no explanation that will make this okay. "That's not me" dies in her throat because it obviously is her. "I can explain" fails because how do you explain 8 years of sex work to a man who married you believing you were modest and inexperienced? She ends up just staring at the evidence of her past spread across the table, watching her entire carefully constructed future collapse in real time. What follows is a fight that starts with his cold accusations and her desperate defenses and escalates into something raw and terrible. He wants to know how many men. She says it doesn't matter, it was before him. He wants to know if she ever loved him or if he was just the best-paying option. She insists she loves him, that she stopped that life completely when they started dating. He calls her a liar and a prostitute. She calls him a hypocrite and says half his business associates probably knew her professionally. The words get crueler as the night goes on. He says every time he touched her he was just another client. She says at least she was honest about what she was selling. He recoils when she tries to embrace him. She collapses on the couch sobbing. He paces on the balcony planning divorces and imagining the gossip and wanting to scream. Neither of them sleeps. The night stretches endlessly, filled with silence broken by occasional accusations. By dawn on May 6th, they are both exhausted, hollowed out, operating on rage and fear and grief for a marriage that lasted less than a week. The careful masks they both wore are completely gone now. She sees his cruelty, his obsession with reputation over her humanity. He sees her calculation, her entire relationship with him, reframed as transaction. They spend May 6th in the villa, not speaking except to hurt each other more. As night falls again, she lies in bed terrified that he will tell everyone, destroy her completely. He lies in a separate room consumed by humiliation and rage and the growing question of what he should do next. Neither of them knows that in a few hours one of them will be dead, and the other will spend the rest of his life insisting it was an accident. May 7th, 2019, 4:30 a.m. The darkness before dawn is the loneliest time in any place, but on an island designed for romance, it feels particularly cruel. Soraya lies in the bed she was supposed to share with her husband, staring at ceiling shadows cast by moonlight through sheer curtains. She hasn't really slept. Every time she closes her eyes, she sees Ryan's face when he looked at those photos, the disgust that replaced everything else. She keeps replaying the fight, searching for the moment she could have said something different, done something different, saved this marriage that was supposed to save her entire life. But there is no such moment. The marriage was built on lies, and lies eventually collapse under their own weight. She has known this truth intellectually since she was a teenager learning to compartmentalize her life into pieces that never touched. But knowing something and living through its consequences are different things entirely. Her body aches from tension. Her eyes burn from crying. Her throat is raw from screaming words she can never take back. At some point during the night, she heard Ryan moving around in the other bedroom, heard him on the balcony, heard the sound of something breaking followed by silence. She wanted to go to him, to try again to make him understand, but his rage earlier had frightened her in a way she hasn't been frightened since her early days working through Selena's agency, when she was still learning to read men for signs of danger. Ryan has never been violent with her, but last night, when he looked at her, she saw something in his eyes that made her understand he was capable of it. Not just anger, but hatred, the kind that comes from humiliation so complete it rewrites every memory they share. Around 4:45, she gives up on the pretense of sleep. Her white honeymoon robe hangs on a hook by the bathroom, expensive silk that was supposed to make her feel like the bride in a magazine. She puts it on, ties it at the waist, and slips her feet into the matching slippers. The villa is silent except for the constant background rhythm of waves against the shore. She moves quietly through the living area, past the table where Ryan laid out the evidence of her past like a prosecutor presenting a case. The papers are still there, her face staring up at herself in multiple versions. The escort photos, the website screenshots, the reviews written by men whose faces she can barely remember. She looks at them for a long moment, these artifacts of a life she tried to bury, and feels something close to grief for the girl who thought she could simply decide to be someone else. The front door of the villa opens silently. Outside, the air is thick with the kind of humidity that comes before sunrise, when the world is caught between night and day. The sky to the east is beginning to lighten, not quite pink yet, but no longer the deep black of true darkness. Soraya remembers from the welcome tour that there is a viewing point along the cliff path behind the villas, a spot where guests can watch the sunrise over the bay. The tour guide had mentioned it was beautiful but warned them to be careful, that the path was narrow in places and the railing didn't extend all the way to the viewing point itself. She needs air. She needs space. She needs to stand somewhere and think about what happens next, because today they are supposed to fly home and she has no idea what version of her life will be waiting when they land. The path is narrow, made of packed dirt and loose stones. To her left is the hillside rising up, covered in tropical vegetation that rustles with invisible life. To her right is the cliff edge, sometimes protected by a wooden railing, sometimes marked only by a rope strung between posts. Below, she can hear the waves hitting rocks, a sound that is soothing in daylight but somehow threatening in the dark. She moves carefully, one hand occasionally touching the railing for balance, her slippers not designed for hiking but managing well enough on the relatively smooth path. The viewing point is maybe 200 yards from their villa, around a curve where the path narrows even more and the railing stops completely. Just a rope and a warning sign. Caution. Dangerous edge. Stay behind rope. She steps past the rope. The viewing point is a small outcropping of rock, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, where the cliff juts out slightly over the water. From here, you can see the entire bay, the curve of the island, the way the resort buildings catch the first light of dawn. It is beautiful in a way that makes her chest hurt. This was supposed to be paradise. This was supposed to be the beginning of everything she worked toward. Instead, it is the place where her past finally caught up with her, where all her careful planning and performance couldn't prevent the truth from arriving in an email with attached evidence. She stands at the very edge, toes inches from where rock becomes air, and looks down. 40 feet below, volcanic rocks jut up from the water like broken teeth. Waves crash over them, foam white against black stone. She is not thinking about jumping. That thought hasn't even occurred to her. She is just standing in a place that matches how she feels inside. Precarious, exposed, one wrong step from falling. Behind her, the sky continues its slow transformation from black to gray to the pale blue that comes before sunrise. She doesn't hear Ryan approaching. The sound of waves masks his footsteps, and she is lost in her own thoughts about divorce and disgrace, and whether she can salvage anything from the wreckage of this marriage. Running away? His voice cuts through the sound of the ocean, harsh and sudden. She spins around, startled, her heart jumping in her chest. He is standing maybe 15 feet behind her, still in the clothes he wore yesterday, his hair disheveled, his face carrying the exhaustion of a sleepless night. But more than exhaustion, there is something else in his expression, something cold and decided. "No," she says, her voice small against the wind and waves. "I just needed air. I couldn't sleep." She takes a step toward him, away from the edge, but he holds up a hand to stop her. "Don't," he says. "Don't come closer. Don't touch me. Don't pretend anymore." His words are measured, controlled, which somehow makes them more frightening than if he were shouting. "Ryan, please," she tries. "Can we just talk? Really talk? I know I should have told you. I know I was wrong. But I love you. That part was never fake. I love you and I want to fix this." He laughs, a sound with no humor in it. "Fix this? How exactly do you fix 8 years of prostitution? How do you fix lying about every single part of who you are? How do you fix making me look like a complete fool?" The last words come out louder, his control starting to slip. "I'm not that person anymore." Her voice rises to match his. "I stopped all of that when I met you. I changed my entire life. You became what I wanted you to be," he interrupts. "You studied me like a client and gave me exactly the fantasy I was stupid enough to buy. The modest girl from a poor family. The traditional woman who would respect me and give me children and make my mother proud. You played a role, Soraya. Or should I call you Yasmin? Which name is even real?" The accusation hits like a physical blow because it is partially true. She did study him. She did construct a version of herself designed to appeal to his specific desires. But somewhere along the way, the performance became real. Or at least she thought it did. Standing here now, she cannot tell anymore where the lie ends and the truth begins. "Soraya is my real name," she says quietly. "And everything I felt for you was real. The rest, yes, I hid it. Because I knew you would never give me a chance if you knew. I was trying to survive, Ryan. I was poor and desperate and I did what I had to do. That doesn't mean I didn't genuinely fall in love with you. Spare me, he spits. You fell in love with my bank account and my social position. I was just the best deal you could get. The ultimate client. One you could lock down with a marriage certificate instead of an hourly rate. He is pacing now, his energy dangerous, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. She feels her own anger rising, the defensive rage that comes from being cornered with no way out. And what were you doing, Ryan? You think you married me for love? You married me because I was beautiful and made you look good and wouldn't challenge you. You wanted a trophy, not a partner. You wanted someone who would restore your precious reputation after Samira left you. We were both using each other. The only difference is I'm honest enough to admit it now. His face goes white, then red. She has hit something deep, the wound from his previous engagement that never fully healed. Don't you dare, he says, his voice low and shaking. Don't you dare compare what I did to what you did. I was trying to build a real marriage. You were running a con. I was trying to build a real marriage too, she shouts back. I left that life behind completely. I cut every tie to it. I thought if I could just get to the wedding, if I could just become your wife, then the past wouldn't matter anymore. I thought I could earn the right to be the person you married. Tears are streaming down her face now, but she doesn't care anymore. Everything is already destroyed. I was wrong. I know that now, but I wasn't trying to hurt you, Ryan. I was trying to save myself. By lying to me every single day we were together. His voice is cold again, the momentary flash of rage retreating behind control. By making me the joke of every business dinner we attended where your former clients were sitting across from us. Do you understand what this does to me? To my reputation? To my family? And there it is, the thing that hurts him most. Not the betrayal of their relationship, but what it means for how other people see him. She sees this clearly now, perhaps for the first time. He is not devastated because he lost the woman he loved. He is devastated because he has been made a fool in front of his social circle. His pride is wounded more deeply than his heart. Your reputation, she says, something bitter and reckless rising in her. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not us, not what we had, just how it looks to everyone else. She takes a step toward him, sees him tense. You want to know the really funny part, Ryan? The thing that makes this whole situation absolutely perfect? Half the men in your social circle already know who I am. I recognized at least 3 of them at our wedding. Your respected banker friend? Client. Your business partner's brother? Client. That politician you admire so much? He knew me as Yasmin before you knew me at all. The words come out like weapons, designed to hurt him as much as he has hurt her. She watches them land, sees his face go through a series of expressions. Disbelief, horror, rage. She has confirmed his worst fear, that his humiliation is not private but public, that people have been laughing behind his back since the wedding. You're lying, he says, but his voice wavers because he knows she isn't. I'm finally telling the truth, she says. They were clients. They saw me at your wedding and probably couldn't believe their luck. The high-class escort landing one of their own. Some of them probably even respected me for it. At least I was honest about what I was selling. Your whole world, Ryan, all those respectable men with their respectable businesses, half of them are just like me. The only difference is they had money to start with. He moves toward her then, fast, and she takes an instinctive step back toward the cliff edge. Take it back, he says, his hands reaching for her. Tell me you're lying about them. Tell me you're making it up to hurt me. Let go. She tries to pull away as his hands close around her upper arms, his grip tight enough to bruise. They are both too close to the edge now, the drop just feet behind her. Ryan, you're hurting me. You've destroyed everything. His face is inches from hers, his breath coming fast, his eyes wild with rage and panic. My reputation, my marriage, my family's name. You've destroyed all of it. I didn't destroy anything, she screams back. You did. By caring more about what people think than about what's real. By being so obsessed with appearances that you couldn't see what was right in front of you. They struggle on the narrow outcropping, her trying to pull free, him holding on as if keeping his grip on her arms can somehow give him control over the situation that is spiraling away from him. Her feet slide on loose pebbles. His weight shifts forward. For one infinite moment, They are both frozen in the understanding that they have gone too far, that this confrontation has moved beyond words into something physical and dangerous. Her foot catches on a jutting rock. Her balance, already precarious, tips backward. She feels herself starting to fall, feels gravity pulling her toward the edge and the rocks below. Ryan's hands are still gripped around her arms. He could pull her forward back to safety. He could anchor his weight and save her from falling. Their eyes meet in that split second, and in his face she sees everything. Rage, fear, calculation, and something else. A decision being made in the space between heartbeats. Does he push her or does he simply let go? Does he actively send her over the edge or does he just fail to pull her back? In that moment, even they cannot fully separate intention from inaction. His hands release her arms. Whether it is a conscious shove or a reflexive retreat from danger, the result is the same. She falls backward, her mouth opening in a scream that the wind and waves swallow. Her white robe billows around her like broken wings. One slipper flies off and lands on the path. The other stays on her foot, will later be found near her body on the rocks below. The fall takes less than 3 seconds. To Ryan, frozen at the edge watching, it seems to last forever. He sees her hit the first rock, sees her body bounce and twist, sees the second impact that stops all movement. The white of her robe spreads across the black volcanic stone. The water washes over her, pulls back, washes over again. From 40 feet up, he can already see the dark stains spreading, though later he will convince himself he couldn't have seen that in the dim light of dawn. He stands at the edge for how long? 30 seconds? 2 minutes? Later, he will not remember this gap in time. His mind has gone blank with shock and adrenaline and the slowly dawning horror of what just happened, or what he just did, or what they did together in that struggle that ended with only one of them still standing. His hands are shaking. His breath comes in gasps. He looks at his palms as if they belong to someone else. Should he call for help immediately? Should he climb down to her, though the rocks are impossible to reach from here? Should he run back to the villa and pretend he just woke up and she was gone? The thoughts cascade through his mind in fragments, incomplete and contradictory. What did he do? What did he mean to do? In that moment when she was falling and his hands released her arms, what was in his mind? He genuinely cannot answer this question, even to himself. The rage was so complete, the humiliation so absolute, that the seconds blur into action without clear intent. But whether it was murder or manslaughter or some terrible accident brought on by his aggression, the result is lying on the rocks below him. His wife of 6 days, the woman he thought he knew, the woman who turned out to be someone entirely different, the woman who is now dead because of what happened on this cliff in the minutes before sunrise. He backs away from the edge slowly, carefully, as if sudden movement might send him over too. He notices her slipper on the path, picks it up with hands that won't stop shaking. He should leave it where it fell. That is what would make sense if she slipped and fell on her own. But his mind is not working clearly enough to think about staging. He simply grabs the slipper because it is something concrete to hold onto in a moment when nothing feels real. The walk back to the villa passes in a blur. He enters through the front door, closes it quietly, stands in the center of the living room trying to remember how to breathe normally. The evidence of her past is still scattered on the table. The photos that started this cascade toward death. He should gather them up, hide them, but he cannot make himself move. He sits on the couch and stares at the wall and waits. For what? For morning to fully arrive. For time to pass so his story will make sense. For his mind to catch up with what his body has done. Around 6 a.m., as real light finally begins to fill the sky, he forces himself to move. He changes clothes, trying to appear as if he just woke up. He goes through the motions of looking for her in the villa, calling her name, checking the bedroom. Then he goes outside, plays the role of worried husband searching for his missing wife. He finds the path, follows it toward the viewing point, sees the slipper where he dropped it earlier. He approaches the edge with appropriate caution and looks down. Acts startled, horrified, begins to shout for help. The performance comes easily because part of it is not performance. He is horrified. He is shocked. He is devastated by what happened, even if he cannot quite separate what he did from what simply happened. By the time the maintenance worker arrives and the resort staff swarms the area and police are called, Ryan has retreated into a version of events that might even be true. She went for a walk. He woke up and she was gone. He searched and found her dead below the cliff. A tragic accident on their honeymoon. A terrible tragedy that will haunt him forever. But as Detective Inspector Rashid Khalil will point out in the hours to come, tragic accidents do not usually leave finger-shaped bruises on a victim's upper arms. Tragic accidents do not usually occur hours after a marriage-destroying discovery. And men telling the truth about tragic accidents do not usually have the desperate, calculating look in their eyes that Ryan carries as he gives his statement to police. The sun is fully up now, turning the ocean beautiful and indifferent. Paradise has become a crime scene, and the investigation is only beginning. The body is removed from the rocks at low tide, a process that takes hours and requires specialized equipment and staff who have done this before but never quite get used to it. Soraya Al-Mansouri, née Nazreen, 29 years old, is placed in a black bag and transported by boat to the mainland where a proper autopsy can be conducted. Ryan is not allowed to see her again. He sits in a conference room at the resort, being questioned gently by Detective Rashid Khalil, a man in his late 40s with gray threading through his dark hair and eyes that have seen enough death to be suspicious of every explanation offered to him. "Tell me again about last night," Rashid says, his voice calm and professional. "After you discovered the information about your wife's past, what happened between you?" Ryan, his own voice hoarse from what he insists is shock and grief, goes through the story again. Yes, he received an email with disturbing information. Yes, he confronted Soraya about it. Yes, they argued. It was terrible, the worst night of his life, learning that his wife had lied about everything. But he never touched her. He never threatened her. They argued, they said terrible things to each other, but it never became physical. She slept in one room, he in another. When he woke up and she was gone, he thought maybe she just needed space. It wasn't until she didn't come back that he started to worry. Rashid writes all of this down in a notebook, his face giving away nothing. He has already spoken to the resort staff who heard raised voices from Villa 12 on the evening of May 6th. He has already examined the villa and noted the shattered glass on the balcony, the papers scattered on the living room table, the evidence of a serious conflict. He has already looked at Ryan's phone, seen the email that arrived on May 5th, seen the searches Ryan conducted afterward. Searches about escort services, about annulling marriages based on fraud, about divorce and reputation damage. And one search, conducted at 11:17 p.m. on May 6th, that Rashid keeps coming back to in his mind, accidental death insurance policy honeymoon. "Did your wife seem suicidal to you?" Rashid asks, a question that could be interpreted as sympathetic or suspicious depending on tone. He keeps his tone neutral. Ryan looks up, confused. "Suicidal? No. She was upset. But she wasn't. I don't think she would have." He trails off, perhaps realizing that if his wife killed herself, it would remove any suspicion from him. But he cannot quite commit to this narrative because it wasn't suicide and some part of him knows that lying about this will eventually be caught. "But she was distressed," Rashid presses. "She had just been exposed, her past revealed. She knew you were planning to divorce her, perhaps tell people about what she had done. That's quite a lot of pressure for someone to be under." "I didn't say I was going to tell people," Ryan objects. I needed time to think." "Of course," Rashid agrees. But from her perspective, her entire life had just collapsed. The marriage she built, the identity she created, all of it destroyed in one night. People have killed themselves for less. Ryan nods slowly, starting to see where this could go. If Soraya threw herself off that cliff in despair and shame, then he is merely the grieving husband, not the potential murderer. It is a lifeline being offered, and he is smart enough to recognize it. "She was very distressed," he says carefully. "Maybe I didn't realize how much. If I had known she was thinking about, if I had any idea she would do something like this, I would have stayed with her. I wouldn't have let her out of my sight." Rashid nods, makes another note, and changes direction. "When you found her on the rocks, what was the first thing you noticed?" The question seems odd, but Ryan answered. "The white, her robe against the dark rocks, and that she wasn't moving." "Did you see any signs that she might have struggled? Tried to catch herself on the way down?" "I don't know. I don't think so. It happened so fast. I wasn't there when she fell, but..." Ryan realizes he is rambling and stops. "But if you had to guess," Rashid continues, "would you say she jumped or slipped?" It is a trap and Ryan knows it, but there is no good answer. If he says jumped, He is supporting the suicide theory but also admitting she was desperate enough to die. If he says slipped, he is claiming accident but leaves open questions about why she was on a dangerous path in dim light. I think, he says slowly, she must have slipped. She wasn't paying attention. Maybe she was upset and distracted, and she just lost her footing. Rashid closes his notebook. We'll know more after the autopsy, he says. In the meantime, I need you to stay on the island. Don't leave the resort. We'll need to speak with you again. Ryan nods, feeling the first real spike of fear. He is not being arrested, but he is not being released either. He is in a limbo that will last for days as the investigation unfolds and reveals details that will eventually trap him more effectively than any immediate accusation could have. The autopsy is conducted on May 8th by a medical examiner who has worked on the mainland for 20 years. The findings are detailed and damning. Soraya died from massive trauma consistent with a fall from significant height onto rocks. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, death likely within minutes of impact. But there are other findings too. Peromotum bruising on both upper arms, the pattern consistent with someone gripping her tightly immediately before or during her death. The bruises show finger marks, clear enough that they can estimate hand size. The size matches Ryan's hands. There are no defensive wounds on Soraya's hands or arms, no skin under her fingernails, nothing to suggest she fought with anyone. But the bruises tell a story of someone grabbing her in the moments before she fell. Detective Rashid receives these findings on May 9th and immediately requests Ryan's phone be forensically examined. What they find in the phone's data is a timeline of obsession and rage. The original email arriving on May 5th at 2:14 p.m., Ryan opening it at 2:47 p.m., then hours of searches about his wife's escort past, reading reviews, finding websites, confirming details. At 11:17 p.m. on May 6th, that search about insurance policies. At 3:42 a.m. on May 7th, a series of searches about accidental falls, about cliff safety, about whether security cameras are common on resort properties. The digital trail paints a picture of a man who was not just discovering information but actively thinking about outcomes, about scenarios, about how deaths might appear to investigators. Soraya's phone tells a different story. Her last activity was at 11:43 p.m. on May 6th, when she drafted a text message to a friend from her old life, someone she had cut contact with 2 years earlier. The message was never sent, left in drafts. He knows everything. He looked at me like I was nothing. I'm scared. I don't know what he'll do. I don't know what happens now. The message is timestamped, proving that less than 6 hours before her death, Soraya was afraid of her husband and what he might do to her. On May 16th, Detective Rashid makes the decision to arrest Ryan El-Mansouri. The combination of motive, opportunity, the physical evidence of bruising, the suspicious phone searches, and Soraya's expression of fear creates a case that might not be perfect but is strong enough to bring charges. Ryan is arrested at the resort, handcuffed, read his rights, and transported to the mainland. His family is notified. His business associates receive carefully worded messages about a tragic situation requiring legal resolution. The media, inevitably, gets hold of the story within hours. Businessman arrested in honeymoon, death of wife, victim was former escort, reads the headline that will define both their lives in the public imagination. The trial does not begin until October 2023, months of legal maneuvering and evidence gathering compressed into a few sentences because justice moves slowly. Ryan's defense team argues accident during argument. The prosecution argues murder or at minimum manslaughter. The jury hears from forensic experts who describe the bruising pattern. They hear from resort staff who describe the tension they witnessed. They hear testimony about the email that triggered everything, about Soraya's past as an escort, about Ryan's obsessive searches in the hours before her death. They hear from Selena, who describes Soraya as someone trying desperately to escape her past and build a different life. They hear from Ryan himself, who maintains that she slipped during an argument, that he tried to catch her but couldn't, that it was a terrible accident born from a terrible situation. What the jury must decide is whether a man who discovers his wife's hidden past, who becomes enraged and humiliated, who confronts her on a cliff edge in the dark before dawn, who grabs her arms hard enough to leave bruises, and then claims she simply slipped and fell, is telling the truth or creating a cover story for murder. The deliberation lasts 3 days. When they return, the verdict splits the difference between accident and intentional killing. Not guilty of murder, which requires proof of intent. guilty of voluntary manslaughter, finding that Ryan caused Soraya's death through reckless and aggressive actions, even if he did not specifically plan to kill her. The sentence is 12 years in federal prison. Ryan's face shows no expression when it is read. Soraya's mother, sitting in the courtroom with her two sons, makes a sound that is somewhere between a sob and a wail. Ryan's own mother sits silent, her face a mask of shame and grief. Outside the courthouse, reporters ask questions that have no good answers. Was justice served? How much does someone's past matter? Where is the line between lying about your history and deserving to die for it? The debates rage on social media and in think pieces and in conversations at dinner tables across the country. But for Ryan and for Soraya's family, the debate is over. She is dead. He is convicted. Everything else is just noise. 6 months into his sentence, Ryan sits in a prison cell that is nothing like the luxury he has known his entire life. The walls are concrete blocks painted institutional beige. The bed is a thin mattress on a metal frame. The window is narrow and reinforced with wire mesh that breaks the sunlight into diamonds. He has too much time to think here, too many hours to replay that morning on the cliff, to examine his own actions and motivations, to try to answer the question that haunts him every night. Did I push her or did I just let her fall? He writes letters to his family that are sometimes returned unopened. He attends mandated therapy sessions where a prison psychologist tries to get him to talk about rage and control and the moment when argument became violence. He maintains to everyone who will listen that it was an accident, that he never meant for her to die, that he loved her despite everything. But late at night, in the darkness of his cell, he sometimes admits to himself that, in that split second when she was falling and his hands released her arms, there was a choice. He could have held on. He could have pulled her back. He could have saved her. And instead, he let go. Whether that makes him a murderer or just a man who made the worst decision of his life in a moment of rage, he will spend the next 12 years trying to understand. Soraya's mother keeps a small memorial in her home, a photograph of her daughter before any of this happened. Before the escort work, before the lies, before Ryan. A photo of a teenage Soraya smiling at the camera, hope in her eyes, unaware of everything that is coming. Her brothers visit sometimes, sit with their mother, remember their sister in pieces that fit together imperfectly. The girl who sent them money for school. The woman who tried to escape her past by building a future on lies. The victim who died because someone couldn't accept who she had been. All of these versions exist simultaneously, and her family must hold all of them at once. On the anniversary of her death, May 7, 2024, Detective Rashid returns to the Crystal Azure Resort. It is part of a routine follow-up, checking if any new information has emerged, but really he comes because the case stays with him in ways most cases don't. He walks the cliff path to the viewing point where she fell. The resort has installed better railings now, extended them all the way to the edge, put up multiple warning signs. The path is safer. But Soraya is still dead, and Ryan is still in prison, and the question of what exactly happened in those final moments is still not answered definitively. Rashid stands at the edge and looks down at the rocks below, now cleaned of any trace of death. He thinks about the two people who came to this spot that morning, both running from their pasts, both trapped by their lies. She lied about who she had been, trying to escape poverty and desperation through deception. He lied about what happened on this cliff, trying to escape responsibility through a story of accident. Both lies had consequences that rippled outward, destroying families, ending futures, taking life. The sun rises over the bay, beautiful and indifferent to human tragedy. Rashid turns away from the edge and walks back down the path. The case is closed. The conviction stands. But like all crimes that happen in that gray space between clear guilt and clear accident, it leaves questions that will never be fully answered. In the end, two people went to that cliff. One fell to her death. One fell from grace. Both were destroyed by secrets they thought they could keep buried. And paradise, which promises escape from everything that haunts us, proved to be just another place where the past eventually finds you. The final image is of the viewing point at sunrise, empty now, the rope barrier swaying slightly in the ocean breeze. A place of beauty that became a place of death. A honeymoon that became a crime scene, and a marriage that lasted 6 days before lies on both sides collided with fatal consequences. This is Crime Ev, reminding you that the deadliest lies are often the ones we tell ourselves, that we can escape who we were, that we can control how others see us, that secrets die when we decide to stop speaking them, but the truth is patient. and eventually it catches up with everyone.